Welcome back, everybody. Today we've got 5 winners and 5 losers from the 2026 NFL Combine. Now that it is over, 5 guys really had their stock rise up the draft boards, and others kind of struggled in these kind of performance evaluation drills. So I want to highlight some guys of each segment. So drop a comment, who was your favorite prospect in this year's Combine? And let's start it off with probably the biggest winner of the weekend. It's going to be Sonny Styles, the linebacker from Ohio State. He recorded a 43.5-inch vertical, which was the highest of any linebacker over the past 20 years. He's an absolute stud. He's a ball hawk, and I think he has the intelligence that didn't even get to be on display at the Combine that will make him a for sure top 10 pick. I know teams like Cincinnati or Kansas City will be eyeing Sonny Styles at picks 9 and 10, but I don't even know if he's going to fall that far. I think the Commanders at pick number 7 could definitely be interested, with Bobby Wagner probably on the decline and probably in one of his last years. Styles could take over and learn from one of the greats and then be able to hit the ground running in 2027, and I think he's going to be a star from day one, so don't be surprised if he ends in the top 7 picks due to this outstanding performance. And then a guy who saw his stock slightly decline, it's going to be David Bailey, the edge from Texas Tech. As far as his metrics and his 40 time, everything checked out well, but the main concerning factor was his on-field performance. I thought his change of direction looked a little bit sloppy, which is a crucial part of being an edge rusher in the NFL. I think he needs to put on a little bit more weight in order to get up to speed with the NFL kind of grit and power, but I think teams are just oohing and awing about the potential that David Bailey can actually predict in the next 5 years. So I wouldn't be shocked if he slips out of the top 5 to 7 and maybe finds himself into that Cincinnati, Kansas City range. But any team is going to be lucky to get Bailey, because if you have a good development program, I think he could actually become a premier edge rusher. He just needs to work a little bit harder on the fundamentals, but the raw talent and athleticism is absolutely there. And then let's go back to the winners. It's going to be Eli Stowers, the tight end from Vanderbilt, had himself an absolute day. A 45-inch vertical for a tight end is just scary good. And then he set the broad jump record for tight ends at the NFL Combine. So he had himself a wonderful performance, and I think he just kind of performed his way into the late first round. I think even a team like Seattle with the last pick of the first round could be interested. I know they have so many guys at every position, but why not just get Stowers, who is an absolute game wrecker, as just kind of an athlete. But I think he projects closer to an Isaiah Likely type build, maybe a little bit higher upside as far as his potential, but I wouldn't be shocked if teams like the Seahawks and maybe the Patriots try and bolster up their tight end core. But a lot of teams are going to be clamoring for Eli Stowers after that performance, and I absolutely do not blame them. But then let's go back to some guys who slipped. I know I don't like using the word loser, but Carnell Tate definitely didn't help himself out a whole lot. He measured in at 6'2". However, on Ohio State's depth chart, he was listed at 6'4". So coming in smaller in weight and height was definitely a little concerning for Carnell Tate. I was shocked that him and Jordan Tyson were actually the same size. They definitely don't play to the same size, but Carnell Tate, I think he's a guy that probably shouldn't have even performed. He should have just let his absolute game-wrecking ability on game film kind of do the talking, but his 40 time, a 4.54, isn't the best for a wide receiver, but granted, he was performing with a whole bunch of speedy wide receivers, and everyone who ran was kind of in the sub 4.4, so it made him look a little bit worse than he was. However, I know some GMs are actually clocking him in as quicker than the official time. I'm not sure what that exactly means, but I wouldn't make too much out of this for Carnell Tate, but I don't think his combine performance helped him in any means as far as his size and stature. So Carnell Tate may slip past Jordan Tyson and Mekhi Lemon. I wouldn't be shocked if he becomes the wide receiver 3 in this draft, but I think he could still be a good value. I think the potential is there to be an X wide receiver in this league. I do think it's a little bit concerning that him and Jeremiah Smith have always been on the field together, so you've yet to see Carnell Tate being the wide receiver 1 and actually having to draw those double teams instead of getting single coverage kind of handed to him due to Jeremiah's talents. But Carnell Tate, after him, it's going to be back to the winners. Caleb Banks, the D lineman from Florida, he ranked in the 99th percentile for wingspan of defensive tackles at his size. This is a freakish type measurement, and I think he is an absolute game changer for whoever drafts him. He's going to be put on that front four, the kind of run-stuffing unit, but he can also get to the passer. He's very violent in his pass rush, and that wingspan just shows up on game tape because he's able to just kind of find his way into tackling the running back, even if he's beat on a block, which is absolutely great for any NFL GM watching. So I think he's going to be a hot commodity and definitely one of the top D linemen, probably ahead of Caden McDonald. I think he's probably going to go in the 10 to 15 range. I think the Cowboys could also look to pair him with Quinnen Williams to really bolster up this rush defense. However, other teams, maybe Minnesota gets another body on the D-line. I know not a lot of teams in that range could use like big body defensive linemen, but I think he is such a luxury to have on your team. I think Miami at pick number 12 could be interesting as well. But yeah, he is definitely not falling past pick number 15 after this performance and measurements. So what a day by Caleb Banks. And then we've got another guy dropping in my kind of rankings as well. Emmett Johnson, the running back from Nebraska. He ran a 4.54 40-yard dash. It was a little bit concerning knowing that all the other running backs performed super well. I know Mike Washington with a 4.33 40-yard dash is impressive, to say the least. And Emmett Johnson was viewed to be the RB3 or 4 of this draft class. However, guys like Damon Claiborne also kind of, I think, leapfrogged him in this draft based off his combine performance. I wouldn't be shocked if he kind of slips into that late third round. I think I had him at a second round pick, but I think guys like Jadarian Price and Jonah Coleman are absolutely going to go ahead of him now. It's kind of upsetting, but I know he's known for more of his pass-catching ability, but not being able to hit the home run is definitely a flaw in his game, and I think it's going to be a red flag for GMs. So I think he's still a serviceable committee back, but his combine definitely showed a little bit of what you saw on tape and just kind of that lack of breakaway speed. So definitely something to keep your eye on for Emmett Johnson. Next, back to our winners group, it's going to be Omar Cooper. The wide receiver from Indiana has already been generating a whole lot of buzz. He's not really known for his excessive speed. However, a sub 4.4 was definitely not in my cards for the 40-yard dash, but he put on in the 40-yard dash and is extremely impressive for Omar Cooper, who scored a touchdown in 6 of his final 7 games at Indiana. He also showed up in the biggest games in the college football playoff. With 70 yards in the national championship, he definitely knows where his role is in the biggest moment. I think they didn't even use him up to his fullest potential, and I think he has a whole lot more to offer. I think his play and his tape, as well as this combine performance, might as well just kind of put him into the first round. With so many wide receiver needy teams, I wouldn't be shocked if a team like Buffalo takes the shot on Omar Cooper, or Cleveland or New York, who have 2 first-round picks, could definitely pull the trigger. I think he fits well as a wide receiver too as well. And I think he may have even just taken over Denzel Boston as maybe the wide receiver 4 in this draft class. I think there's a big tier gap as far as Lemon, Tyson, and Tate. But going after that, I think Cooper and Denzel Boston are now neck and neck, depending on what you want, whether you want the big body wide receiver or just kind of the shorter, more intermediate, shifty, get him into open space guy like Omar Cooper, who just put on a masterclass at the Combine. I think he's only going to be rising up the ranks. And don't be shocked if he's in the late first round of the NFL draft. I know earlier, a few weeks ago, he was late second round, but his stock is rising fast. And then we got Rueben Bain, the edge rusher from Miami. Yes, the Hurricane, who showed up big time in the college football playoff. However, at the Combine, his measurements were a little bit concerning. His arm length was the shortest of any first-round edge rusher in the last 20 years. It's going to be an outlier for sure, and you'll know a lot whether arm length is going to be a big mattering of fact as far as his production on the field in the next coming months. However, I don't think it's going to hinder his draft stock a whole lot. It may kind of put him neck and neck with Arvell Reese on the board. But I am personally on the board thinking that Rueben Bain is much, much better. I think he's going to be more productive from day one. I know he showed up to the Combine, no haircut, all business in his interviews, which I loved. He said he has no hobbies. Football is his hobby, so you're not getting any distractions with Rueben Bain, and he just plays with such a tenacity and physical will that I think it's going to be hard for the Jets or Cardinals to pass up on at picks 2 and 3. And for the Jets, I think they've traded Jermaine Johnson in hopes of taking Rueben Bain. You trade your premier edge rusher and get T'Vondre Sweat to kind of be the big nose tackle, but you still need some pressure on the outside, and you get a young Rueben Bain, but maybe his arm measurements are enough to kind of string them in a different direction and go Arvell Reese. But Rueben Bain, I think, is still my number 2 prospect in this draft, and I wouldn't be shocked if he goes there, but I mean, the arm measurement with Will Campbell and how it affected his performance, you just never know in this NFL Combine and the NFL draft approaches what's going on in these NFL GMs' minds. But Bain definitely slid a little bit in this Combine. And then back to the winners, I mentioned his name earlier. It's going to be Mike Washington, the running back from Arkansas. He ran a 4.33 40, and I think he's firmly my RB3 or 4 in this draft class now. He is a speedy back that I think in this NFL draft, as far as the running backs are concerned, you're kind of lacking this overall speed, kind of hit the home run running back. You have guys like Jonah Coleman who are a little bit slower and kind of the big bruiser running back, and even Jadarian Price kind of slotted in a little bit slower in the 40 than I was expecting. So a team that is already having kind of their their early down running back and needing of kind of an explosive guy after the carry to really bust it to the outside, I think Mike Washington will be their pick over guys like Emmett Johnson or Jadarian Price. So I think it's going to be him and Price neck and neck at RB3. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's a late second round pick, maybe an early third for a flyer of a team. But I think in a committee, it kind of makes the most sense. Some teams that I would definitely put out there would be the Houston Texans. If you're able to kind of wait on running back and not take one of the premier ones and pair him with Woody Marks, I think you could actually go into 2026 with an explosive run game to really help CJ Stroud develop back to his rookie year production. But Mike Washington, nonetheless, has definitely rose up my boards dramatically after that performance. I know he was fast. I watched all the tape, but actually seeing it in person, he is an absolute demon, and a 4.33 is insanely impressive. So Mike Washington's on the rise, and so is Drew Aller. He's going to be our last prospect here. I wanted to add another winner from the Combine because I actually watched all of his pass reps, and his deep ball looked like what it did when people were projecting him as a top 10 pick in this draft. I think he still has a whole lot of potential, and for a guy that's probably slotted in the third or fourth round, I think he has the highest upside out of any of the guys, whether it's Carson Beck or Garrett Nussmeier. I think Aller actually kind of has that ability. If you're able to kind of untap his legs and be a mobile quarterback, which he didn't really do at Penn State, but I think he can kind of chip into that attribute of his rushing ability. And I think if you give him a few years to develop with a real quarterback coach or an offensive coordinator and kind of take away those turnover-worthy throws, Aller could be a star in the making and a hidden gem in this draft class. So that is going to do it for all of the winners and losers from the NFL Combine. Drop a comment which ones you liked and hit a subscribe before you go. I would really appreciate it. And that is going to do it. Peace.